Once again, thank you to everyone who was so supportive of all the chaos that we experienced earlier in the week. And I thought about it and I thought, maybe I'm just a canary in the mine. And that's really good for all the miners who go to churches and have to smell gas. It's not so good for the canary, but I'm grateful that I'm here. Today begins a 3-part series on the Sabbath. And so I ask that you pray with me and pray together. O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts together be truly acceptable, for you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I figured since Reverend Barbara, is spending a few months thinking and learning and reading and studying about the Sabbath, we could spend a few weeks on it, right? Yes? Some of you I know have participated in the class that was taught earlier in June, and I did, and what a wonderful feeling it was to be sitting again with a professor of Old Testament. Some of you have studied with David the book by Abraham Heschel on the Sabbath, a classic book that is quoted by just about everybody who writes about the Sabbath. And this month, I'll be starting a book study with Marva Dawn about the Sabbath as well, a different take on what Sabbath means. All 3 of these experiences are somewhat the same and somewhat different. All 3 explain the hows and whens of Sabbath a little bit differently. And we will get to the whens and hows in the next 2 weeks. All 3 explain the who and the why with almost exactly the same reasons. And that's what I'd like to talk about today, because without a why and a who, there doesn't need to be a how and a when. So first, let me give you a couple of definitions of Sabbath. Of course, I looked at my first source, which is Wikipedia, most people's Encyclopedia Britannica these days. And in their definition, they say in Abrahamic religions, the Sabbath or Shabbat from Hebrew is a day set aside for rest and worship. Then I went to my next source, Merriam-Webster, and they had 2 definitions of Sabbath. One was the 7th day of the week observed from Friday evening to Saturday evening as a day of rest and worship by Jews and some Christians. And B, Sunday observed among Christians as a day of rest and worship. And Eugene Peterson said, Sabbath is that uncluttered time and space which we can distance ourselves from our own activities enough to see what God is doing. I like that one the best. But there's more to come. I thought that other definitions might help us a little bit to understand the what, but it still does not really inspire us with the whys. You see, the Sabbath began with, our story of creation and with the Jewish nation. According to Genesis 2, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the 7th day, God had finished the work God had been doing. So on the 7th day, God rested from all of God's work. God rested on the 7th day, thus making it sacred. For the pious Jew, keeping the Sabbath holy is a mitzvah, or duty, for God. And the Old Testament takes the Sabbath so seriously that profaning it results in the death penalty. That's a serious commitment. So I wonder, why aren't people committed and connected to the Sabbath these days? Is it because we're too removed from these traditions? Is it because we're too immersed in the busyness of this world? Is it because we need a good reason? Maybe we need some why? Why Sabbath? Well, I have 5 whys for you. Reason number one, God commands us to keep the Sabbath. Exodus 20. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, your daughter, your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, that should be good enough for us, right? No? Reason number two, the Sabbath is a sign of a special covenant that God made with all the people. A contract, a covenant, a relationship. In Exodus 31, I won't read the whole thing, but Moses is asking to speak to the children of Israel. And God says, surely my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and earth, and on the seventh he rested and was refreshed. So, we believe we are God's people as part of that heritage. So if we are God's people, then we honor this covenant, right? Even Yeshua, Jesus, kept the Sabbath. Should that be enough for us? Yes? No? Even if I added that the apostles and the first followers all kept the Sabbath, is that enough? Reason three, keeping Sabbath is good for your health. Now we're getting somewhere. Rest is commanded to be given to all, not only to the members of the privileged family who may own the house, but also to everyone who works for that family, strangers even, aliens, refugees, immigrants, and even animals. So that's the who, everyone. And we know our bodies were not designed to work 24/7, even though we like to think they were. Our body was created to have rest time so that our body could heal, rejuvenate, repair, calm our minds. And God gave us a way and a day where we could do that. Medical studies show that those who rest and take rhythmic resting have vital parts of healthier lifestyles. And you can imagine the benefits. Healthier heart, improved mood, improved immune system, better ability to concentrate, improved emotional, social intelligence, decreased risk of accidents, sharper brain function, lower risk for depression, improved productivity, reduced stress level. Need I go on? Yes? We all know people need to work to earn a living. However, without the right perspectives and God's guidance, we can become slaves of our own work. Yes? Yes. iPads, texting, phones. We can become addicted to success and getting things done and producing and climbing that, I got all those things done. But we don't have to be like that. God suggests strongly we take a day. Take a day. Keep Sabbath. It does a body good. There's a Formula One race car driving that know in racing it's the fastest sports in the world, Formula One. Central to the strategy of winning a Formula One race is the pit stop. No driver, no matter how fast they drive, can win a race without taking a pit stop. In pit stop, the drivers take refreshment, receive instruction, have engine repairs, refuel the tank, set off on fresh tires. A Formula One race is all about speed and strategy, and it is in the timing and management of the pit stop that the race is often won. We do not rest because our work is done, because it's never done. We rest because God created us to have a need for it. Today we read in Deuteronomy, and remember that although you were a slave in the land of Egypt, the Lord your God brought you out of that place. Do you remember? That's part of this. So reason number 4, the Sabbath reminds us of how God freed and continues to free us. To keep Sabbath is to remember the deeds of God. Can you remember a time when God delivered you from something? When you went, thank God. Thank God that happened. If we do not take the time to reflect and remember, we'll forget. Perhaps that's how we've lost our why. We've just forgotten how important it is to take time to remember God. Reason number 5. The Sabbath strengthens relationship with people and with God. No surprise there. What did you notice when COVID came? I noticed it slowed everything down. I noticed that some had a forced Sabbath. Some did not, and you see the effects of their COVID exhaustion even still. Many people found that they had extra time to spend and no place to go. So they took up a new instrument, or they cooked slowly. They painted and created, read a book, a whole book, called and Zoomed friends they hadn't talked to in months or years. We found a new way to worship. Some of us even had time for prayer and meditation. Whoa. We made holy moments out of one huge unholy mess. With everyday tasks, we found spiritual practices. Frying eggs became an occasion to listen to the eggs and the bacon as it sizzled. Folding laundry became a time to fold our hands and pray. Getting outside became a time to appreciate the very blue sky that I had forgotten because there was little pollution in it. And we could notice God's creation. Because we were isolated, it reminded us to reach out to others. We saw the effects of the time well spent, and simple things became holy again. As holy as the day was spent, we were changed for a moment. Remember Eugene Peterson's quote, "Sabbath is that uncluttered time and space in which we can distance ourselves from our own activities enough to see what God is doing." It's no wonder that those who keep Sabbath are generally the same people who have a good relationship with others and with God. As you can see, the Sabbath day is much more than just resting. It's a rebalancing, a recentering, a reprioritizing, a refocusing. If all of these weren't enough reasons why, here's one more. The Sabbath brings great blessings. Remember that God blessed the Sabbath, and thus all those people who honor the Sabbath, which is the 4th commandment, honor God and become part of a blessing for themselves and for others. Ben Franklin tells a story that I'd like to end with. It's like an incident that Ben Franklin told about. An English minister was once ordered to read a proclamation issued by King Charles. After a period in which the country had observed strict blue laws on Sundays back then, the king issued a decree urging people to return to participating in sports on Sunday. Sound familiar? Most church leaders refused to read the proclamation. But to one congregation's amazement, their minister read the king's decree. But he followed the pronouncement with these words: "I have laid before you the commandment of your king. Oh, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." And he added, "Brethren, I have laid before you the commandment of your king and the commandment of your God. I leave it to you to judge which of the two ought to be served." After all these reasons, I guess I go back to the first one. I hope for you it comes back to that as well. God offers it, God suggests it, expects it, and even God commands it. So that will be enough for me. Will it be enough for you? Amen.